My psych ward paralyzed teen girls with sedatives for exposure therapy, where male staff would assault our frozen bodies in whitewashed rooms while the head doctor watched through one-way mirrors. When I fought back by exploiting my abuser's latex allergy, they scheduled me for a lobotomy via oxygen deprivation. But a technician who'd already killed one girl in the chamber refused to kill another and set the kitchen on fire to force an evacuation. In my psych ward, teen girls like me were given sedatives that would paralyze our entire bodies, then forced into whitewashed rooms with male staff, where they would reenact our physical trauma with our frozen bodies in the name of exposure therapy. The rooms were whitewashed to give our brains no stimulation, forcing us to focus on nothing but how the reenactment felt. The head doctor at the clinic, Dr. Ornstein, was the grandson of this high-ranking WW2 German scientist who was brought over to America during Operation Paperclip. The day I arrived, I was assigned my personal male nurse, a guy his late 40s named Larry, who came into my room give me my first exposure session. He pinned me down and tried to force the sedatives into my mouth, but I bit on his hand hard as I could, causing him to scream. His hand made contact with my face, and before I knew it, 3 male nurses were holding me down and injecting me with a needle to IV the sedatives directly into my bloodstream. I spent the next 20 minutes feeling my body slowly shut down, despite retaining all physical feeling, and when my body had turned to what felt like stone with nothing but my eyes moving, the door was shut, leaving only me and Larry inside. He spent his entire allocated hour with me, and by the time he was done, he whispered in my ear that feisty girls like me were his favorite. The next day, Dr. Ornstein came into my room with some stronger sedatives. He explained that because of my resistance, he had no choice but to increase my daily exposure sessions from 1 to 2. I tried to fight back, but multiple nurses pinned me down again, and I was forced to repeat what I endured. Over the next few months, I became a shell of my former self. I felt my brain turning more catatonic by the day. I started forgetting things like my own family's name, and the bruises around my body grew. The resistance I used to display every time they came in shrank until Larry himself could hold me down. He'd sometimes get bored during the sessions, forcing my frozen body into different poses he liked most. Dr. Ornstein would send bi-weekly reports to my parents, detailing how much progress I was making and how receptive I had become to getting help. Meanwhile, I'd get taken out of the whitewashed room after each session, where Ornstein would be standing at the one-sided window, one hand still in pants, staring directly at me. The more time went on, the more lifeless I became. I stopped eating, and nurses would have to restrain me to shove food down my throat. I stopped drinking, so I had to have hydrating fluids IV'd into me. The sedatives I started receiving were so strong, I was paralyzed for over 8 hours per day. I'd scratch my arms and my legs raw during the hours I could move, but that was put to a stop when I was caught and put in a straitjacket for my own safety. I remember coming in contact with another girl once. She couldn't have been older than 14, and had ripped her own hair out in the hopes of becoming too unattractive for her male nurse. I was about 4 months into my treatment when I had my moment of hope. I was in one of my sessions when Larry leaned in and whispered that I should cry to my dad for help, and even in my checked out phase, I felt anger like never before. My dad was my hero. He died in Iran. Nobody talked bad about him and got away with it. I remember after my session I stayed awake thinking, when you can't move, it's all you can do anyway. And despite all the pills, my mind was so hardwired on making Larry pay, I was able to remember something. A couple of weeks ago, I was getting my blood drawn by Larry. He seated me into the chair, but when it came time to put the gloves on, he gave me to another nurse. I can't touch that stuff, he said, referring to the latex gloves. That's when I got the idea. During my next blood drawing session, while the nurses were looking away, I grabbed a pair of latex gloves and stuffed them into my pocket. Once in my room, I tore the gloves open and rubbed the latex powder all over my body and waited for the next session with Larry, because as disgusting as it was going to be, I was going to get revenge. He came in 90 minutes later and sedated me, then started the reenactment. But as soon as his skin made contact with mine, he grabbed his throat and doubled over. He started wheezing and gasping for air, dropping to his knees calling for backup. I saw his lips swelling and his vision started to blur, but then the other nurses rushed in. They had an EpiPen ready for him and saved his life. Larry was rushed out of the room, leaving me standing there paralyzed, terrified for my life. 15 minutes later, Dr. Ornstein finally came in. He slowly approached me and told me what I did was unforgivable. I assaulted and attempted the murder of a staff member, and for that I deserved only the most extreme last resort treatment possible, a full lobotomy via oxygen deprivation. Tomorrow at noon, my head would be placed in an oxygen-deprived tank, where I would be held until my brain lost millions of cells. Then I would be pulled out, allowed to catch my breath, and have the process repeated until my brain was like a zombie's. Dr. Ornstein patted my face, then headed out, locking the door. I lay there frozen on the medical bed, my body completely paralyzed from the sedatives while my mind raced with terror. The door clicked shut behind Dr. Ornstein, and I heard the electronic lock engage. Tomorrow at noon, less than 24 hours before they destroyed my brain. The sedatives would wear off in about 6 hours, but that still left me trapped here, unable to move or call for help. My eyes darted around the room, searching for anything that might save me. The whitewashed walls offered nothing. No windows, no vents large enough to escape through, just the locked door and the one-way mirror where Dr. Ornstein watched his sick sessions. Hours crawled by. I focused on wiggling my fingers, trying to speed up my body's recovery from the substances. Eventually, around 3 in the morning, I regained enough movement to sit up. My legs wobbled as I stood, still weak from months of sedation and limited movement. I stumbled to the door and pressed my ear against it. The hallway outside was quiet. Night shift meant fewer staff, but they still made rounds every hour. I had maybe 40 minutes before someone checked on me. The door handle wouldn't budge, of course, but then I remembered something from my first week here, before the substances made everything fuzzy. Another patient had mentioned the ventilation system, not to escape through, but because sometimes you could hear things, messages between rooms. I dragged the metal bed frame across the floor, wincing at the scraping sound. Standing on it, I could just reach the small vent near the ceiling. My fingers fumbled with the screws, but they were painted over, impossible to turn. Footsteps in the hallway. I scrambled down and shoved the bed back into place just as a flashlight beam swept under my door. The guard moved on. Back on the bed, I used my fingernails to chip away at the paint around the screws. One broke off, sending sharp pain through my finger. I kept going with the others. Finally, after what felt like hours, I got one screw loose enough to turn. The vent cover hung by 3 screws now, creating a small gap. I pressed my mouth to it and whispered, "Can anyone hear me? Silence. Please, if anyone can hear this, they're going to lobotomize me tomorrow. I need help. A faint whisper came back. New girl? Is that you? My heart jumped. Yes. Who are you? Room 12. They did it to my roommate last month. She doesn't talk anymore. Just sits there drooling. My stomach turned. Is there any way out? Any way to contact someone outside? The kitchen staff. Some of them aren't like the nurses. They bring our food trays. Sometimes they'll pass messages. How do I? Footsteps again. I dropped down and pretended to sleep as the flashlight swept by. When it was safe, I climbed back up, but the girl in room 12 had gone quiet. Maybe her guard had come by too. I spent the rest of the night trying to think of a plan. The kitchen staff. But breakfast wouldn't come until 7, and they'd probably sedate me again before then for my morning session. Unless, when dawn light started creeping under my door, I had an idea. It was desperate and would probably fail, but I had nothing left to lose. I took the loose screw from the vent and used it to scratch my arm until it bled. Then I smeared the blood on my face and the floor, making it look like I'd had some kind of episode. I lay down in the blood, positioning myself awkwardly, and waited. Sure enough, at 6:30, I heard the morning nurse approaching with a sedative cart. The lock clicked open. Time for your morning. Oh my god. She rushed in, leaving the door wide open as she knelt beside me. I stayed limp as she checked my pulse, then she turned to call for help. That's when I moved. I grabbed the syringe from her pocket and jammed it into her thigh, pushing the plunger. She gasped and stumbled backward. The sedative worked fast. Within seconds, she was sliding down the wall, her eyes going glassy. I'm sorry, I whispered, meaning it. She was just doing her job, even if that job was horrible. I dragged her fully into the room and took her keycard. My hands shook as I peered into the hallway. Empty. The other nurses would be making rounds on different floors. I had maybe 10 minutes before someone noticed she hadn't returned. I couldn't run for the exit. Too many locked doors between here and freedom, too many cameras. Instead, I headed for the kitchen. The girl in room 12 had said some kitchen staff might help. The service elevator was around the corner. I pressed the keycard to the reader, holding my breath. Green light. The doors opened. Inside, I hit the basement button. The kitchen was down there, along with laundry and storage. I wonder what Larry's real reason was for telling her to cry to her dad for help when he knew her father was dead. That seems like such a strange thing to say unless he was trying to make her angry on purpose for some reason we don't understand yet. Places where non-medical staff worked. People who might not be part of Dr. Ornstein's sick system. The elevator seemed to take forever. When the doors finally opened, I smelled food cooking. Following the scent, I found myself outside a set of swinging doors. Through the small window, I could see people in white uniforms preparing breakfast trays. I pushed through the doors. Several workers looked up, surprised. Please, I said quickly. I need help. They're going to lobotomize me today. I need to contact my family. Most of them looked away, fear in their eyes. But one woman, older with gray hair, stepped forward. You're the girl who fought back, the one who hurt Larry. I nodded. He was. During the sessions. We know. Her voice was quiet. We all know what goes on up there, but we need these jobs. We have families. So do I. Please, just let me make one phone call. That's all I ask. She glanced at the others, then back at me. There's a phone in the supply closet, but you have to be quick. The breakfast delivery starts in 15 minutes. She led me to a small room stacked with canned goods. An old phone hung on the wall. My fingers trembled as I dialed. Would my parents even believe me? Dr. Ornstein had been sending them reports for months, telling them I was improving. The phone rang once, twice. Hello? My mother's voice groggy with sleep. Mom, the word came out as a sob. Sweetie, is that you? What's wrong? The doctor said you weren't allowed phone calls yet. Mom, listen to me. The doctor is lying. This place, they're not helping me. They're hurting us. All of us. They substance us and honey, calm down. Dr. Ornstein said you might have episodes like this, that the treatment can be confusing at first. No. Mom, please. They're going to lobotomize me today. They're going to destroy my brain because I fought back against. The line went dead. I stared at the receiver. Had she hung up or had someone cut the connection? You need to go, the kitchen woman said urgently. They'll be looking for you. But where could I go? The elevator would be monitored by now. The stairwells required key cards at every floor. I was trapped in the basement with nowhere to run. Is there another way out? I asked desperately. The loading dock, but it's locked from the outside. Delivery trucks come at 8. An hour and a half, too long. They'd find me before then. Heavy footsteps echoed from the elevator area. Multiple people moving fast. Security. Hide, the woman hissed, pushing me toward a large industrial freezer. Inside. Quick. I yanked open the heavy door and slipped into the freezing air. Boxes of frozen vegetables lined the shelves. I crouched behind them, my hospital gown offering no protection from the cold. Through the door, I heard muffled voices. They were questioning the kitchen staff. Would anyone give me away? The cold bit into my skin. I couldn't stay here long without risking hypothermia, but going out there meant capture and lobotomy. I noticed something in the corner. A laundry cart full of dirty kitchen uniforms. An idea formed. Moving quietly, I stripped off my hospital gown and pulled on the least dirty uniform I could find. It was too big, but it covered me. I found a hairnet and tucked my hair up under it. The freezer door opened. I pressed myself flat against the wall behind the cart. Check everywhere, a guard's voice ordered. She couldn't have gotten far. Footsteps came closer. A flashlight beam swept over the boxes. I held my breath, frost forming in the air. Clear, the guard said finally. The door slammed shut. I waited, counting to 100 before creeping out. The kitchen was in chaos, guards questioning everyone. In my uniform, I tried to blend in with the workers. You there? A guard pointed at me. Have you seen a patient? Teenage girl, about this tall? I shook my head, keeping my face down. No, sir. Been in the freezer doing inventory. He moved on. My heart hammered so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. The kitchen woman caught my eye. She subtly nodded toward a cart loaded with breakfast trays. Understanding, I grabbed the handle and started pushing it toward the service elevator. Just another kitchen worker doing her job. Hold up, a guard said. Where are you taking those? 3rd floor, I mumbled. Morning delivery. He looked at me suspiciously. I don't recognize you. New hire, the kitchen woman said, appearing beside me. I'm training her. We're already behind schedule because of all this commotion. The guard hesitated, then waved us through. Make it quick. We entered the elevator. As soon as the doors closed, the woman pressed the button for the 2nd floor, not the 3rd. Why? Dr. Ornstein's office is on the 2nd floor. He keeps all the patient files there. Real files, not the fake reports he sends to families. My eyes widened. You're helping me? My daughter was here 5 years ago. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late. She's never been the same. Her voice was thick with old pain. If you can get evidence, real evidence, maybe you can stop him. The elevator dinged. 2nd floor. His office is at the end of the hall. The code is 4827. I clean his office. I know because I've watched him enter it 100 times, but you have to be fast. The cameras will show me going to the 2nd floor instead instead of the third. She nodded. I'll deliver these trays. Create a distraction. You have maybe 5 minutes. The doors opened. The hallway was empty, but I knew that wouldn't last. I speed walked to the end, trying to look like I belonged. The keypad beeped as I entered the code. 4827. Green light. I was in. Dr. Ornstein's office was exactly what I expected. Dark wood, medical degrees on the walls, and a desk covered in files. I went straight for them. My file was on top, the real one. I flipped it open and nearly vomited. Photos. Detailed notes about each session. Not medical terminology, but sick, explicit descriptions of what Larry and the others had done. What Dr. Ornstein had watched through the mirror. I grabbed my file and several others. Evidence. Proof of what this place really was. A hidden drawer was slightly open. Inside, more files. Older ones. The kitchen woman's daughter was here. Page after page of horror. How many girls had been through this? How many families had been lied to? Voices in the hallway. Time was up. I stuffed as many files as I could under my uniform and looked for another exit. There, a connecting door to another office. I tried the handle. Locked. The main door started to open. No choice. I ducked under the desk just as Dr. Ornstein walked in with 2 guards. She has to be somewhere in the building, he was saying. Check every room, every closet. We cannot let her leave. Not when she's scheduled for treatment in 3 hours. My blood ran cold. 3 hours. It was already 9 o'clock. What about the family? A guard asked. The mother called. Said the girl contacted her. I assured her it was just an episode. The poor woman believes her daughter is getting better. We can't let the patient's delusions ruin months of progress. They left, but I stayed hidden. Dr. Ornstein moved around his desk. I could see his shoes inches from my face. He sat down, his legs sliding under the desk. If he moved them even slightly to the side. The phone rang. Yes? I see. Keep searching. She's probably hiding somewhere, scared and confused. The sedatives can cause paranoia. Yes, prepare the oxygen chamber. We'll proceed as scheduled whether we find her or not. If she resurfaces after the procedure, she won't be able to tell anyone anything. He hung up and stood. I held my breath as he walked to the door, locked it behind him, and left. I crawled out, my whole body shaking. The files pressed against my skin under the uniform. Evidence that could save me and all the others, but only if I could get it out. The connecting door was still locked, but Dr. Ornstein's keycard was on his desk. He'd forgotten it in his hurry. I grabbed it and tried the door. It opened into a smaller office, empty. From there, I made it to another hallway. This one had a window at the end. Real sunlight, something I hadn't seen in months. But the window was sealed, reinforced glass. There she is. I spun around. 2 guards at the far end of the corridor. I ran the opposite direction, the files shifting under my uniform. Another hallway, another turn. I was lost in the maze of administrative offices. A stairwell door appeared. I yanked it open and started climbing. Up was probably stupid, but I couldn't think straight. My legs burned from months of inactivity. 3rd floor, 4th. At the 5th, I heard footsteps below. They were following. The stairs ended at a door marked Roof Access. Authorized personnel only. I used Dr. Ornstein's keycard. It worked. Cold morning air hit me like a slap. The roof was flat, covered in ventilation equipment and utility boxes. The edge was ringed by a high fence topped with wire. No way to jump, even if I wanted to. But I could see the city beyond. Buildings and cars and normal people living normal lives. No idea what happened in this place. The door burst open behind me. Guards flooded out, surrounding me in a wide circle. Easy now, one said, hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. You're confused. The medication? I'm not confused. I pulled out the files, holding them high. I have proof. Evidence of what you do here. Give those to us, and we'll forget this happened. Dr. Ornstein is willing to cancel your treatment if you cooperate. Lies. I knew better. Once they had me, I'd disappear into that oxygen chamber and come out a vegetable. I backed toward the edge of the roof, not to jump, but to buy time, to think. Your parents are on their way, the guard continued. Dr. Ornstein called them. They're very worried about you. My parents. Kitchen lady with the assist. 5 years of watching that code, cleaning up Evil's paperwork, waiting for someone brave enough to use it. That's some serious long game revenge planning right there. Coming here, either to take me home or to watch their daughter be lobotomized, depending on what Dr. Ornstein told them. How long until they arrive? The guard looked confused by the question. Maybe an hour? An hour, if I could just hold out. More footsteps. Dr. Ornstein himself emerged onto the roof, flanked by Larry. The nurse had bandages on his neck from the allergic reaction, and his eyes burned with hate. Now, Dr. Ornstein said smoothly. This has gone far enough. You're sick, my dear. These delusions, this paranoia, it's all part of your condition. That's why your parents sent you here, to get better. You're the sick one. I held the files tighter. I have the photos, the notes, everything. His expression didn't change, but I saw Larry tense. Those are confidential medical records. Taken out of context, they might seem alarming to someone in your state of mind, but I assure you, everything we do here is legal and approved by your guardians. Legal doesn't make it right. Give us the files. Larry spoke for the first time, his voice raspy, or we'll take them. They started closing in. I had nowhere to go. The fence at my back, guards all around. In minutes, they'd have me. The files would disappear. I'd disappear into that oxygen chamber. Unless. I looked at the ventilation units. Big industrial fans spinning behind metal grates. If I could throw the files into one, they'd be shredded, destroyed, but that was my only evidence. Last chance, Dr. Ornstein said. Be reasonable. Your parents trust me to make you well. Don't you want to be well? I thought of my father, my hero who died in Iran. What would he do? He'd fight. He'd never give up, but he'd also be smart about it. The guards were almost within arm's reach. I had seconds to decide. Then I heard it. Sirens. Not ambulances, but police cars. Multiple ones getting closer. Dr. Ornstein heard them too. His calm mask slipped for just a moment. What did you do? I hadn't done anything, but someone had. The kitchen woman? One of the other staff who knew the truth? The sirens grew louder. Definitely coming here. Get those files, Dr. Ornstein ordered. Now! The guards rushed forward. I threw myself sideways, rolling across the rough roof surface. Files scattered from under my uniform. Pages of horror spreading across the concrete. I scrambled to gather them as guards grabbed for me. Larry got his hands on my ankle. I kicked out, catching him in his still swollen throat. He let go, gasping. More sirens. And now, from the stairwell, new voices, shouting. Not hospital security. Police! Nobody move! Everyone froze. Officers flooded onto the roof, weapons drawn. Behind them, I saw my parents. My mother's face was streaked with tears. My father's friend from Iran, Uncle Rashid, was with him. He'd survived the war. He'd know about fighting back against oppression. That's her, my mother cried. That's my daughter! I ran to them, files clutched to my chest. My legs gave out before I reached them. Months of substances and abuse finally catching up, but they caught me. My parents caught me and held me while I sobbed out the truth. The police took the files. Dr. Ornstein tried to explain, to spin his story about treatment and medical procedures, but the evidence was too damning. Photos no medical professional would take, notes that had nothing to do with therapy. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at me. You have no idea what you've done. The research, the progress, years of work destroyed by one hysterical girl. Good, I said. Larry and the other nurses were arrested too. The kitchen woman who'd helped me came forward, along with 3 other staff members who'd been documenting abuse for months, waiting for someone brave enough to act. It turned out she'd called the police after I left her in the kitchen, told them about the scheduled lobotomy, about the files in Dr. Ornstein's office, gave them enough probable cause to get a warrant. My parents took me home that day. The other patients were transferred to real hospitals, ones that actually helped instead of hurt. The facility was shut down, its horrors finally exposed, but I was one of the lucky ones. Some girls had been there for years. Some had already been through the oxygen chamber. They'd never fully recover. I spent months in therapy, real therapy, working through what happened, learning to trust again, to sleep without nightmares, to believe that not everyone who claimed to help actually wanted to hurt. The trial was hard, testifying about what happened in those whitewashed rooms, but I did it. For myself, for the other girls, for the ones who couldn't speak anymore. Dr. Ornstein got life in prison. Larry got 20 years. The facility was demolished, turned into a memorial garden for the victims. I still have scars, inside and out, but I survived. I fought back, and sometimes when I visit the memorial garden, I see other survivors there. We don't always talk. We don't need to. We just stand together, grateful to be free, grateful to be alive. My father would have been proud. I need to write the middle section of this story, continuing from where the beginning left off. However, I noticed the beginning section appears to be a complete story with a resolution. The protagonist escapes, police arrive, the villains are arrested, and there's even an epilogue about the trial and aftermath. Since I need to continue this as a middle section that escalates conflict, I'll treat the ending as a false resolution or dream sequence, and continue with the protagonist still trapped in the facility facing the lobotomy threat. This maintains narrative continuity while allowing for proper story development. My father would have been proud. The thought echoed in my mind as consciousness slowly returned. Cold metal pressed against my wrists. The familiar sting of restraints bit into my skin. My eyes fluttered open to harsh fluorescent lights. The escape, the police, my parents' rescue, none of it had been real. The sedatives had given me one final mercy, one last beautiful dream before they destroyed my mind forever. Dr. Ornstein stood over me, checking his watch. Larry waited in the corner, no bandages on his neck. The latex attack had worked, but everything after existed only in my drugged imagination. My body remained completely paralyzed from fresh sedatives. They'd learned from my escape attempt, if there had even been one. The substances made it impossible to separate reality from hallucination anymore. Dr. Ornstein noticed my open eyes and leaned closer. His breath smelled like mint and decay. He explained that my little stunt with Larry had moved up my procedure. Instead of noon, they would begin in 1 hour. The oxygen deprivation chamber was already prepared. Larry approached, favoring his left side where the allergic reaction had been most severe. Purple welts still marked his neck. He'd insisted on being present for my lobotomy, wanting to watch as they turned my defiant mind into mush. They wheeled my gurney down unfamiliar hallways. This part of the facility went deeper underground, where the worst procedures happened, where girls went in but never came back the same. The oxygen chamber looked like a metal coffin with a small window. Tubes and monitors surrounded it. A technician adjusted dials while Dr. Ornstein reviewed my file one last time. They transferred me from the gurney into the chamber. My paralyzed body offered no resistance as they positioned me inside. The metal felt cold against my hospital gown. Dr. Ornstein's face appeared in the window above me. He explained the process. They would remove oxygen gradually, allowing my brain cells to die off in controlled waves. Between each session, they'd restore oxygen just enough to keep me alive, but not enough to prevent permanent damage. The chamber door sealed with a pneumatic hiss. I tried to scream, but my vocal cords remained frozen. Only my eyes could move, darting frantically as the air grew thinner. My lungs began to burn. The urge to breathe became overwhelming even though my paralyzed diaphragm couldn't respond. Darkness crept in from the edges of my vision. Just before I lost consciousness, they restored the oxygen. I gasped mentally, if not physically, desperate to fill my lungs, but they only gave me enough to stay conscious for the next round. The second deprivation lasted longer. Brain cells started dying. I could feel them flickering out like candles in wind. Memories began to fade. What was my mother's name? Did I have siblings? The knowledge slipped away like water through fingers. Between the third and fourth session, something changed. The technician monitoring my vitals frowned at his screens. He called Dr. Ornstein over, pointing at readings that concerned him. My heart rate had become dangerously erratic. The combination of sedatives, oxygen deprivation, and the stress on my system was causing complications they hadn't anticipated. Dr. Ornstein ordered them to continue anyway. One more session would complete the basic lobotomy, but the technician protested. Pushing further could trigger cardiac arrest. While they argued, I focused on the one memory that refused to die. My father in his uniform, smiling before his last deployment. His voice telling me to be strong, to never give up, to fight even when fighting seemed impossible. The chamber door opened unexpectedly, not for another session, but because the technician had triggered an emergency release. He decided saving my life mattered more than his job. Dr. Ornstein flew into a rage, demanding the procedure continue, but the technician stood firm. He'd already culled one girl in this chamber. He wouldn't have another death on his conscience. They pulled me out while Dr. Ornstein screamed about insubordination. The technician checked my pupils, monitored my breathing, ensured I was stable enough to survive. That's when the fire alarm went off. The technician suddenly growing a conscience right when she needs saving seems awfully convenient. Where was this guilt during all the other procedures he must have done? That fire alarm timing is making me wonder who else might be working behind the scenes here. Not a drill. Actual smoke poured through the ventilation system. Someone had set fire to the kitchen on the floor above, the same kitchen where I'd hidden in my dream, where sympathetic workers had tried to help. Standard protocol demanded evacuating all patients, even those in restricted areas. Guards rushed in to move me and other girls from the deep basement. In the chaos, nobody noticed the technician slip something into my hand, a key card. They wheeled multiple gurneys toward the evacuation point. Smoke grew thicker, triggering real panic among staff. Dr. Ornstein tried maintaining order, but even he couldn't override basic fire safety protocols. Outside, emergency vehicles arrived. Not just fire trucks, but ambulances ambulances for potential smoke inhalation victims. Real paramedics who weren't part of Dr. Ornstein's system. The sedatives began wearing off faster than usual. Perhaps the oxygen deprivation had affected how my body processed substances. Tiny movements returned to my fingers first. A paramedic approached to check patients for smoke inhalation. Unlike the facility staff, she showed genuine concern. She noticed my fingers twitching and frowned. She asked a guard why I was so heavily sedated. He gave some vague medical excuse, but she'd seen enough to recognize oversedation when she encountered it. She made notes on her clipboard. Dr. Ornstein appeared, trying to convince emergency responders that all patients needed to return inside immediately, but the fire chief refused. The building had to be cleared and inspected before anyone could re-enter. They'd have to transport us to the hospital for temporary holding. Dr. Ornstein protested vigorously but had no authority over city emergency services. As they loaded me into an ambulance, I managed to move my hand enough to drop the technician's keycard where the paramedic would see it. She picked it up, noting the facility logo and security level. During the ride, she kept checking my vitals and asking questions I couldn't answer. My vocal cords remained paralyzed, but my eyes must have communicated desperation because she began documenting everything suspicious. At the hospital, they placed us in a secure wing, but it was nothing like Dr. Ornstein's facility. Real doctors examined us. Real nurses checked for injuries beyond smoke inhalation. A neurologist noticed signs of recent oxygen deprivation to my brain. She ordered scans, blood work, proper medical evaluation. The results alarmed her enough to call the hospital administrator. Meanwhile, Dr. Ornstein arrived with lawyers, demanding his patients be returned immediately. He had paperwork, parental consent forms, legal documentation supporting his authority. But the hospital administrator had questions. Why did multiple teenage girls show signs of oversedation? Why did several have suspicious bruising patterns? Why did one patient show evidence of recent oxygen deprivation? Dr. Ornstein produced medical explanations for everything. The girls were severely disturbed, prone to self-harm, required intensive intervention. He had documentation supporting every procedure. The administrator might have been convinced except for one thing, the keycard. Security investigated how a patient obtained staff access. That led to questions about the technician who disappeared during the evacuation. They found him in the hospital cafeteria, wrestling with his conscience. When security approached, he broke down and confessed everything. The oxygen chamber, the girls who died, the treatments that were anything but therapeutic. His testimony gave the hospital grounds to delay releasing us back to Dr. Ornstein. They needed time for proper investigation. Child Protective Services would need to be involved. Dr. Ornstein's lawyers threatened lawsuits, but the hospital's legal team stood firm. Patient safety superseded custody agreements when abuse was suspected. They moved us to a different wing, away from Dr. Ornstein's reach. Real psychiatrists began proper evaluations. The sedatives wore off completely, allowing us to speak. But years of conditioning made talking difficult. We'd been punished for speaking truth for so long that words felt dangerous. Only gradual patient questioning drew out our stories. The other girls confirmed similar experiences. The paralysis substances, the white rooms, the male nurses who did unspeakable things while we couldn't move, Dr. Ornstein watching through mirrors. One girl had kept a journal hidden in her mattress, documenting dates and details. Another had scratched notes into the paint behind her bed. Piece by piece, evidence accumulated. But Dr. Ornstein hadn't survived this long by being careless. His lawyers arrived with court orders, parents who'd signed away their rights, documentation that every procedure followed established protocols. The hospital could only hold us for 72 hours without formal charges. After that, legal custody would force our return to Dr. Ornstein's facility once the fire damage was repaired. We had 3 days to prove systematic abuse, 3 days to overcome years of carefully crafted documentation, 3 days to make someone believe teenage girls over a respected doctor. The fire investigation revealed arson. Someone had deliberately set the kitchen ablaze. Dr. Ornstein blamed a patient, probably me, though I'd been in the oxygen chamber when it started. Security footage was conveniently corrupted. The backup system had mysteriously failed. Only Dr. Ornstein's words supported his version of events. But the technician's testimony carried weight. He'd worked there for 5 years, participated in procedures he now couldn't live with. His detailed accounts of the oxygen chamber matched the medical evidence. Still, Dr. Ornstein had explanations. The technician was disgruntled, possibly involved with the arson. The oxygen therapy was experimental but approved for severe cases. Parents had consented to everything. On the second day, something unexpected happened. A woman arrived claiming to be my aunt. I didn't recognize her, but she had documentation proving family connection. She'd been searching for me for months after my parents had cut off contact with extended family. Dr. Ornstein's influence had isolated us, preventing outside interference. But the fire had made local news. She'd recognized the facility name and came immediately. Unlike my parents, she hadn't fallen under Dr. Ornstein's persuasive spell. She demanded to see me. Hospital staff verified her identity and allowed a supervised visit. The moment she saw my condition, the bruises, the weight loss, the hollow eyes, she began crying. She revealed something crucial. My parents had been struggling financially before I was admitted. Suddenly, they'd paid off debts and bought a new car. Where had the money come from? Dr. Ornstein had been paying them, not officially, but through a research grant for families of special needs children. Monthly payments as long as I remained in treatment. This changed everything. Financial incentive corrupted parental consent. My aunt contacted a lawyer specializing in psychiatric abuse cases. He'd handled similar situations before, but we still needed more evidence. The other girls' families showed similar patterns. Financial struggles followed by mysterious windfalls after admission. Dr. Ornstein had bought compliance. The lawyer worked frantically, filing emergency injunctions to prevent our return. But judges required concrete evidence, not just suspicions and testimony from traumatized teenagers. On the final day, with hours remaining, another breakthrough came. The kitchen woman from my dream, she was real. She came forward after seeing news coverage. She'd worked at the facility for years, documenting what she could. She had photos taken through doorway cracks, audio recordings of staff discussing sessions, names and dates correlating with missing girls. Her evidence was limited but damning. Combined with the technician's testimony and medical examinations, it painted a clear picture of systematic abuse disguised as treatment. But Dr. Ornstein's lawyers were equally prepared. They questioned the kitchen woman's credibility. They presented their own experts supporting the treatment methods. They had signed consent for everything. The judge faced an impossible decision. Legal documents supported Dr. Ornstein, but testimony suggested horrific horrific abuse. Parents had custody rights, but possible financial corruption complicated matters. With 1 hour before the custody deadline, my aunt laid her final card. She'd contacted my mother, appealing to whatever maternal instinct remained beneath Dr. Ornstein's influence. My mother arrived at the hospital, conflicted and confused. She'd believed Dr. Ornstein's reports of my progress. The monthly payments had saved them from bankruptcy, but seeing me in person shattered those justifications. I was skeletal, covered in healing bruises, with dead eyes that barely recognized her. This wasn't the daughter she'd sent for help. This was a victim of something monstrous. She wavered, torn between Dr. Ornstein's promises and the evidence before her eyes. My aunt pressed harder, showing photos of me before admission, healthy, troubled perhaps, but whole. The breaking point came when another mother arrived. Her daughter had died in Dr. Ornstein's care 6 months ago. Supposedly Sewers lied, but she'd never believed it. She'd been fighting for justice ever since. She showed my mother pictures of her daughter's body, the bruising patterns, the signs of prolonged restraint, the medical examiner's questions that Dr. Ornstein's connections had silenced. My mother collapsed, realizing what she'd allowed to happen. She revoked consent on the spot, signing whatever papers my aunt's lawyer produced. Other parents followed suit as doubt spread. Dr. Ornstein arrived for the custody transfer to find parents rescinding consent. His careful system was unraveling. Fire safety protocols defeating evil doctor's control. That's some seriously hot justice served fresh from the kitchen lady's revenge cookbook. Even Dr. Ornstein's lawyers can't argue with smoke alarms. Parents who'd been isolated from each other were comparing stories, finding patterns. He tried damage control, reminding them of their financial obligations. The research grants came with contracts. Removing children from the program meant repaying everything. But threats of financial ruin paled against the reality of what their children had endured. One by one, parents chose bankruptcy over continued abuse. Still, some parents remained under his influence. Those girls would return to the facility once repairs were complete. We could only save ourselves, not everyone. The hospital discharged me into my aunt's custody. Other girls went with family members who'd fought Dr. Ornstein's isolation tactics. Some entered legitimate treatment programs, but freedom felt hollow knowing others remained trapped. The facility would reopen. Dr. Ornstein would continue his treatments with whoever he could keep. My aunt took me to her home 3 states away. Distance from Dr. Ornstein mattered, but psychological distance proved harder. Nightmares came every night. Paralysis dreams where I couldn't move while shadows approached. She found me a real therapist who specialized in institutional abuse. Slowly, carefully, we began unpacking the trauma, learning to trust again, remembering how to exist without constant fear. The technician who'd saved me faced criminal charges for his participation in previous procedures, but his cooperation with authorities led to a plea deal. His testimony would be crucial if cases ever went to trial. The kitchen woman disappeared after giving her statement. Dr. Ornstein's reach was long, and she had family to protect. Her evidence remained, but she wouldn't risk further involvement. Weeks passed in my aunt's care. Physical health returned slowly. Regular meals, no sedatives, actual sleep instead of substance-induced unconsciousness. But psychological healing would take years. Then news came that changed everything. Another fire at the facility, this time destroying the administrative wing where records were kept. All evidence of treatments, consent forms, financial arrangements, gone. Dr. Ornstein blamed sabotage, but had no proof. Insurance would cover rebuilding, but recreating decades of documentation would be impossible. Without records, continuing operations became difficult. Parents who'd been paying back research grants suddenly had no proof of debt. The complex financial web holding families hostage dissolved into smoke and ash. But Dr. Ornstein wasn't finished. He had backup systems, off-site storage, connections throughout the psychiatric industry. The facility might close, but his methods would continue elsewhere. My aunt's lawyer explained the harsh reality. Without the original records, prosecuting past abuse became nearly impossible. Dr. Ornstein had covered his tracks perfectly, whether through arson or fortunate timing. The other survivors and I stayed in contact through encrypted messages. We shared recovery milestones and setbacks. Some healed faster than others. Some never healed at all. One girl sent a final message before disappearing. She'd seen Larry at a new facility 2 states over. Different name, same methods. The network was adapting, spreading, surviving. Dr. Ornstein announced the original facility would close permanently. Damage was too extensive, insurance complications too complex. But he'd secured positions for his staff at affiliated institutions. The victory felt hollow. We'd escaped, but the system remained intact. Other girls would suffer what we had suffered. Other parents would be manipulated and paid off. My therapist helped me understand that survival itself was victory. We couldn't save everyone, but we'd saved ourselves. That had to be enough, even when it felt like failure. Months of therapy revealed suppressed memories. Girls who disappeared from the facility. Unexplained deaths ruled as suicides. A hidden cemetery on the grounds that no official record acknowledged. The memories haunted me worse than the nightmares. Faces of girls who'd vanished from the facility floated through my consciousness during therapy sessions. My therapist, Catherine, encouraged me to document everything I remembered, no matter how fragmentary. 3 months after my escape, I received an encrypted message from one of the other survivors. She'd tracked down information about the new facilities where Dr. Ornstein's staff had relocated. Larry worked at a residential treatment center in Pennsylvania. Dr. Ornstein had secured a position at a private psychiatric hospital in Ohio. My aunt found me at my desk that night, printing out facility layouts and staff directories. She understood immediately what I was planning. We argued for hours, her fear for my safety clashing with my need to prevent more girls from suffering. The next morning, she surprised me by packing her own bag alongside mine. If I was going to do this, she wouldn't let me go alone. We drove 14 hours to Pennsylvania, stopping only for gas and bathroom breaks. The residential treatment center sat on manicured grounds that looked deceptively peaceful. We parked across the street and watched staff come and go. Larry emerged during a shift change, his distinctive limp from the latex reaction still visible. My aunt suggested we contact the facility's board of directors, but I knew how that would go. Dr. Ornstein had taught me how easily authority figures could be manipulated with the right documentation and professional credentials. Instead, we waited until visiting hours. My aunt signed us in as prospective clients touring the facility. The receptionist barely glanced at our false names on the visitor log. During the tour, I spotted her immediately. A girl, maybe 15, with the telltale hollow eyes and defensive posture I recognized from the mirror. She sat alone in the common area while other patients socialized. Fresh bruises marked her wrists wrists where restraints had been. I excused myself to use the bathroom and doubled back to the common area. The girl looked up as I approached, fear flashing across her face. I showed her my own wrist scars and watched recognition dawn in her eyes. She glanced around nervously before whispering a room number. I memorized it and returned to the tour group. My aunt created a distraction by asking detailed questions about treatment philosophies while I slipped away again. The girl's room was unlocked during daytime hours. Inside, I found what I expected. The same restraint marks on the bed frame, the same one-way mirror poorly disguised as regular glass. Hidden behind her dresser, scratched into the paint, were dates and initials. A record of sessions. Footsteps in the hallway sent me scrambling under the bed. Larry entered with a medication cart. I watched his feet move around the room, heard him muttering about missing inventory. He left without checking under the bed. I photographed the scratched dates with my phone and crept back to find my aunt. She was still keeping the tour guide occupied with questions about insurance coverage and admission procedures. That night, in our motel room, we researched the initials from the wall. 3 matched missing person reports from the past year. Girls whose families had been told they'd run away from treatment. The next day, we drove to Ohio. Dr. Ornstein's new hospital was larger, more prestigious. Security was tighter too. We couldn't simply walk in as visitors. My aunt suggested a different approach. She'd noticed the hospital was hiring kitchen staff, the same type of workers who'd helped me escape before. People who saw everything but were often invisible to those in power. I applied under a false name, using the food service experience I'd gained helping my aunt with her catering business during recovery. The interview was perfunctory. They needed bodies to fill shifts. 3 days later, I reported for orientation. The kitchen supervisor, an older woman named Benji, assigned me to the meal delivery routes. It gave me access to most of the hospital while maintaining the invisibility of service staff. For 2 weeks, I delivered trays and observed. Dr. Ornstein had an office on the 3rd floor. He'd instituted similar protocols to his previous facility. Restricted wards for special treatment patients. All teenage girls. I recognized the signs immediately. Girls who flinched when male staff approached. Unexplained bruising. The telltale glassy eyes of oversedation. And always Dr. Ornstein watching from doorways with that same predatory focus. One girl, barely 14, reminded me of myself at admission. Still fighting, still defiant. During tray delivery, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes begged for help she couldn't verbalize. That night, I called the technician who'd saved me. He'd been working with prosecutors, trying to build cases despite the destroyed evidence. He gave me the name of an investigator who'd been tracking Dr. Ornstein for years. The investigator couldn't do much without evidence, but she taught me what to document. Times, dates, unusual medication schedules, staff rotation patterns, small details that painted a larger picture. I spent another week gathering information. Which nurses worked the restricted ward, when security cameras were serviced, how the medication inventory system functioned. Every detail mattered. Then Larry arrived. Dr. Ornstein had requested his transfer, reuniting his core team. I watched from the kitchen as he reported for his first shift, that familiar predatory smile already in place. That night, I made my decision. The investigator had explained that without physical evidence or victim testimony, prosecution remained impossible. But there were other ways to stop predators. I knew the hospital's layout now, knew that the pharmacy had specific protocols for controlled substances, knew that Larry still had the same latex allergy that had nearly culled him before. Parents realizing they'd rather face bankruptcy than let their kids suffer more makes me wonder what financial hold this doctor really had over them in the first place. Then another convenient fire destroys all the evidence right when investigations might have started. Seems like someone knew exactly what needed to disappear. During my next shift, I volunteered to clean the pharmacy after hours. The supervisor appreciated initiative and gave me the access code. Inside, I found what I needed. Latex gloves in every supply drawer, latex tourniquets in the phlebotomy section. But I didn't take anything. Instead, I carefully documented the inventory system, the security measures, the protocols that were supposed to prevent medication theft but could be circumvented by someone with the right access. The next day, during meal delivery, I watched Larry enter the restricted ward. The 14-year-old fighter was scheduled for her first special session that afternoon. I could see it in the way staff prepared, the way Dr. Ornstein lingered near her room. I finished my deliveries and returned to the kitchen. Benji noticed my distress and pulled me aside. She'd worked there for 15 years, had seen staff come and go. She knew something was wrong with the restricted ward, but felt powerless to act. I showed her my documentation, the medication irregularities, the suspicious patterns, the connections to Dr. Ornstein's previous facility. Her face went pale as understanding dawned. She revealed that other kitchen staff had noticed things too, delivered meals to girls who couldn't eat due to oversedation, cleaned rooms with restraint marks on the furniture, but they all had families to feed, couldn't risk their jobs. Together we hatched a plan, not the violent revenge I'd fantasized about, but something more effective. Benji had a nephew who worked in hospital administration. He'd been concerned about irregularities in the restricted ward's budget, excessive medication costs, unusual equipment purchases. That night, Benji arranged a meeting. Her nephew Benjamin reviewed my documentation with growing alarm. The patterns were clear once someone looked for them. Medications ordered but not properly logged. Equipment that served no legitimate therapeutic purpose. Benjamin had authority to order an internal audit. It would take time, but it would be thorough. Every medication dose, every equipment purchase, every protocol violation would be examined. But I knew Dr. Ornstein. He'd survived investigations before. He'd have explanations, documentation, ways to shift blame. The audit alone wouldn't be enough. The next morning, I arrived early for my shift. The restricted ward was quiet, most patients still sedated from nighttime medications. I delivered breakfast trays, noting which girls barely stirred at the smell of food. In the 14-year-old fighter's room, I found her semi-conscious, fresh restraint marks on her wrists. Whatever had happened during yesterday's session had broken something in her. The defiance was gone, replaced by vacant submission. I set down her tray and noticed something, a small digital recorder hidden under her mattress. She'd been documenting too, gathering evidence just like I had, but now she could barely focus her eyes. I palmed the recorder and continued my rounds. In the bathroom, I listened to her recordings, dates, times, descriptions of what happened during sessions, and most damning, Dr. Ornstein's voice, giving instructions that had nothing to do with legitimate therapy. The audit was scheduled for the following week, but I couldn't wait that long. More girls would suffer. More spirits would be broken. The 14-year-old might not survive another session. That afternoon, I did something risky. During my delivery rounds, I slipped latex gloves into the medication cart Larry would use. Not to hurt him. I'd grown beyond revenge fantasies, but to create a medical emergency that would require investigation. Larry discovered the gloves during his evening rounds. His allergic reaction was swift and severe. As staff rushed to treat him, protocols demanded a full investigation of how latex had contaminated a latex-free medication cart. The investigation revealed more than expected. In their haste to respond, staff had left the restricted ward's medication room unsecured. Hospital security found irregularities, medications signed out but not administered, doses that didn't match patient charts. Benjamin used the incident to accelerate the audit. Within 24 hours, a team of investigators descended on the restricted ward. They interviewed staff, reviewed records, examined equipment. Dr. Ornstein tried to maintain control, but the evidence was overwhelming. The 14-year-old's recorder, which I'd anonymously delivered to Benjamin, contained admissions that no amount of professional jargon could explain away. Parents were notified. Real doctors examined the girls. The pattern of abuse became undeniable. Unlike before, Dr. Ornstein couldn't destroy the evidence. It existed in too many places, involved too many witnesses. I watched from the kitchen as police escorted him out in handcuffs. This time, it was real. This time, he couldn't talk his way out or relocate to another facility. The multi-state pattern of abuse had finally caught up with him. Larry was arrested at the hospital where he was recovering from his allergic reaction. Other staff members were questioned. Some arrested, others fired. The restricted ward was shut down immediately. The girls were transferred to legitimate treatment facilities. The 14-year-old fighter went to a trauma center that specialized in helping abuse survivors. She'd have a long road ahead, but she'd have real help this time. I gave my notice to Benji, who hugged me and thanked me for having the courage she'd lacked. She promised to keep watching, to speak up if she saw signs of abuse again. My aunt drove me home in silence. We were both exhausted, emotionally and physically, but there was also relief. We'd done what the system had failed to do, protected vulnerable girls from predators. Back in therapy with Catherine, I processed what I'd done, the risks I'd taken, the rules I'd broken, the line between justice and revenge that I'd walked. She helped me understand that healing sometimes meant taking action, not just processing trauma. The other survivors reached out as news spread through our network. Some were angry I'd taken such risks. Others were grateful someone had finally stopped Dr. Ornstein permanently. All of us were changed by knowing he could never hurt another girl. Months later, I testified at the trials. Facing Dr. Ornstein in court, seeing him in orange instead of a white coat, gave me a closure I hadn't expected. When he was sentenced to 30 years, I felt my father's presence in the courtroom. The hospital implemented new protocols, background checks that would have revealed Dr. Ornstein's history, oversight measures that made isolated special treatment wards impossible. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. I returned to school, caught up on missed credits, began planning for college. My aunt helped me research psychology programs. I wanted to become the kind of therapist these girls deserved, one who understood trauma from the inside. Some nights, the nightmares still came, paralysis dreams where I couldn't move or speak, but now I had tools to cope, people who understood, a future that belonged to me. The facility's memorial garden became a place of pilgrimage for survivors. We'd plant flowers for the girls who didn't make it, tend to growing things instead of dwelling in darkness, life persisting despite everything. My story spread through survivor networks, not through media or fame, but whispered between girls who needed hope. That escape was possible, that predators could be stopped, that we could reclaim our lives. I kept the 14-year-old fighter's recorder as a reminder. Her voice, documenting abuse even while enduring it, represented the strength we all carried, the refusal to be silenced, even when they tried to steal our voices. Years would pass before I felt truly free, before I could trust medical professionals again, before intimate relationships didn't trigger panic. But I was alive, I was healing, and I was helping others do the same. My father would have been proud, not of the revenge I'd fantasized about, but of the justice I'd helped achieve, of the girls who were safe because I'd refused to let Dr. Ornstein continue his evil. In the end, that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Thanks for letting me drop some sharp takes along the way. Definitely more fun with you all here for the ride. Catch you next time, my clever crew. Like the video, it helps more than you think.